I grew up just one house down from the church building. Spent my first 18 years here in this congregation, and I was also baptized here. So it's always like coming home, and it's amazing all the changes that have happened here and what's going on. And but it's also hard to believe that it's been 40 years too 40-ish years since I left here. So I actually, the people that found Nema Village in the Christian Chronicle was my sister Renee. And she and her husband Curtis went to Nema Village in 2018. And as soon as I saw the pictures and the videos and the stories, I knew that I needed to go. And I had been doing some mission work in El Salvador. And so the next year I went to Nema Village, spent 2 weeks there, and knew I needed to return. So anticipating that I would go the next year, then that's when COVID hit. And had to wait and go back in 21, and I spent 3 weeks there. And it just confirmed again what they were doing was such a good work, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of it. So I came home from that trip, and I have to say that it was the first time ever in my life I probably said, "Okay, God, it's up to you." You know, I am my father's daughter. I went with a plan. I thought I had to come home with a date and know everything and have everything worked out by the time I left Africa in 2021. And of course, I spent a few days there and it was like, well, that's not going to happen. So I came home and I had talked with the founders, and they did not have a position that was really available. And with the government there, you can't have too many Americans in an organization. They get a little nervous. And so I said, that's fine. I'll go home. I can work a little longer and then continue working and come back and volunteer. And that was October. And in February, I woke up one Saturday morning and to an email, and it said, I have an idea. And Doris had emailed me and said, we'd like you to come and be the sponsorship coordinator for Nema. And it was a total God thing in that it was a time when I could retire. I really wanted to retire after 35 years in working. And that's when the housing market was so high, and I sold my house for way more than it should have sold for. And then everything just fell into place. There was just no barriers. It was just, there took some planning, there took some time, but it all worked out. So in September of 22 is when I made my official time with Nema as a long-term volunteer. And that kind of starts the story. So I've been there. I was home a year ago. Usually I'll come home about once a year. This year I'm going to come back in October because I have a big alumni reunion at York University. And so, which is unusual. I usually will come home once a year. So are we ready to get started? Okay. So Nema Village is in Arusha, Tanzania. It started as a baby rescue center, and it has just grown and blossomed from that. Going here. I love this quote from David Pratt. It says, orphans are easier to ignore before you know their names. They're easier to ignore before you see their faces. It's easier to pretend they're not real before you hold them in your arms. But once you do, everything changes. And that is so true. And I've had a hard time since I've come back. I've been back 3 days. Every time I see a baby, I want to pick it up and give it a hug and give it a kiss. And I'm like, oh, I better not be doing that. You know, people might think that's a little strange. Arusha is in Tanzania, where the star is, and is right there where we are in Africa. We are 3 degrees south of the equator, and so it never gets cooler than about 60 degrees. And so this morning when we stepped outside, and it was like, whoo, it's a little chilly. The month of August is my favorite month because I can wear a sweatshirt. Everything else, it's just too warm. We're also about 4 hours from Nairobi, Kenya, and we're about 10 hours in from the coast. Arusha is one of the bigger cities in Tanzania, and we sit at an elevation of 4,600 feet, and there's 2.3 million people in Arusha. Sometimes it's hard to think, oh my goodness, it's that big, and then you get into traffic. And we have one large 4-lane bypass that goes around the city, and everything else is 2 lanes. This is the view from the volunteer house where Aaron and Renee and Curtis stayed. There's a house right next door where I stay. I have my own room. And from what you can, the view here is Mount Meru. Mount Meru is an active volcano. The last time it blew was in 1917, and it's the 5th highest peak in Africa. And it's beautiful. And I always call it the mountain of God because the clouds come and sit on top of that mountain quite a bit during the day. And I just always envision the Israelites when they were going through the desert and, they had the mountain, the cloud of light by day and the fiery cloud at night. And I always think of that. But it's ever changing. It's also actually harder to climb. You can climb this mountain, but it's much steeper. But it's a beautiful sight every day to see. The other big view that we have when the day is just right and the clouds are gone is Mount Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro is the largest mountain in Africa. It's 19,000 feet. We have lots of people that come and climb Kilimanjaro while they stay at Nema. On a clear day, we can see it. And again, I always call her she changes constantly. This picture is lots of snow, but right now there's not a whole lot of snow on the mountain. We're about 50 miles away, but it's beautiful. The land that we're on, the owners that we bought it from, had intended to do a safari lodge, which would have been absolutely beautiful with both views of the mountains. Everything's very green right now. This is in the rainy season. We're in the rainy season right now. And that's why I'm here, so I don't have to deal with all the rain. These are our founders, Doris and Michael Fortson. This all started way back in 1963 when he went to a Wednesday night meeting of missions at ACU. And there was a gentleman there that wanted 12 boys to go to Africa for 6 months and to teach the gospel. And so at the time he was engaged to Doris, but this was something that was very interesting to him and he wanted to go. The stories he tells are just absolutely amazing. In 1963, it was a whole lot different than it is today. There were no roads. They made their own roads out in the bush. They went out and spent 6 months, and they baptized just over 1,000 people and established 50 congregations in southern Tanzania. Some of those congregations are still active today. So he got the bug, and he came back to the United States, finished his degree at ACU, and he and Doris got married, had their first child, and then they returned to Tanzania to be missionaries. So he was part of a missionary or preacher training school in southern Tanzania. And Eric, have you been to Tanzania? No. Yeah. You've been to Africa. Yeah. Okay. So there's a mission, there is a hospital there in southern Tanzania, and I'm sorry, it's escaping me at the moment, but they lived at the top of this mission, at the top of the mountain. They had 56 hairpin turns to get down to the hospital. But they had this going, and they spent 6 years there, and they probably would have stayed forever, except they needed to educate their children. And at the time, there was a lot going on with the government of At the time, it was called Tanzania. And this was before they joined and became Tanzania. So they came home. He spent the next 40-ish years in ministry in Texas. He was a college minister in Nacogdoches, Texas. And they raised their children. And then in 2008, they wanted to take their 2 children that were born in Tanzania back so they could see where they were born and where they lived their first years. And one thing that they found on this trip was there were orphans everywhere. There was children in the streets running around. And they had never experienced that in the 60s. And they were just amazed at this. And the big part of it was AIDS. The AIDS had just completely taken out a generation in Africa. And so they saw a need for children. So after that 2008 trip, they came back a second time, spent about 4 months traveling through Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, trying to find a place that they could start this mission. What they found also was that there was nobody that would really do things for babies. Babies are expensive. And so there was just not a place for babies. And so they said, you know what, we think we can do that. We can do babies. So their intention was to come and spend their retirement years. They started this at age 70. Spend their retirement years and take care of babies. So in 2012, Michael came back, found a rental house, and got everything done. He bought everything from cups and saucers, and he made baby beds and just everything that was needed for the mission, while Dora stayed home and continued to raise money. And so they started, they could house about 30 children, 30 babies in this ginormous house, and that's how they got started. Now, as soon as they got there, they knew that they were going to outgrow this rental property pretty fast. And so they started looking for land. And you just don't go to the realtor or you don't go to the courthouse to find who owns land or what land is available. You just start looking around and asking people. And so Michael started right away looking for a place that they could call their own. And it took a while, and they found this land, and like I said, it was owned by 2 women and a man, and they were going to open a safari lodge. And the gentleman had passed away, and the 2 women decided they couldn't do that on their own, and so they wanted to sell. One was from Europe, and one was from America, and at that point, they didn't have any money at all to buy land. But the church that they worked with said, if you can raise $30,000, then we'll match it. And so they knew pretty much that they could raise $60,000. So he went to them, and this part of it is we had to be 30 minutes from a hospital. We wanted to be within the city limits, but we also wanted at least 10 acres of land. And that's very difficult. That's very difficult to find. And so they began looking, and they found this place. And it's just on a ginormous hill that starts way at the top and just goes all the way down into a valley. And when they first got there, there was this little patch of grass, and there was goats on it, and there was boys playing soccer. And they didn't have a soccer ball. They had all these plastic bags rolled up and tied together, and that's what they were playing, was soccer or football. I have to get used to that. I have to call it football. So they made an offer, and of course the women did not, I think they wanted I don't know how much they wanted, $150,000 for this 10 acres of land. And so they said, no, we won't take your offer. And I think at the time, Michael offered them $90,000. Didn't have $90,000, but he offered them $90,000. And so they said, no, we have a buyer. And then we walked away. A year later, they came back and saw that the property had still not been sold. And so they came back, and this time he offered them $150,000. And they took the offer. So everything was at a point, it was getting signed, signed, sealed. They had prayed about this. And when they did fundraising, we have a treasurer who is very specific on what, if funds are given for land, it must be used for land. If funds are given for a certain project, it needs to be used for that project. So they had their $150,000, and they said, everybody stop, no more fundraising is needed for the land, we have it. And right before signing, they came back and said, one of the ladies said, I'm not making enough money. I need $7,000 more. And so Doris, who's a redhead, she said, you know what? They'll come around. They'll take the 150. We have prayed about this. We have laid the fleece to God in front of us. It's 150. They waited and waited, and the lady didn't budge. And finally, one day, Michael told Doris, he said, do you want to give this land up for $7,000? And she said no, but they said, we've told everyone to stop. Well, that Sunday, a church in Nebraska took up a donation, and they raised $7,200, and they marked the check land. And at that point, we had Name a Village. So the main campus is on 10 acres. We have about 15 acres that some of is across our road, and then some is down below us on land that we now own. So of the 10 acres, we have 15 different buildings on campus. They all have a different purpose. For most of it is for housing. If anybody has questions while we're going through here, please just interrupt. So here are our programs that we have. Like I tell people, Name a Village is like an iceberg, and what you normally see is just about the babies. What's happened is we started working with babies because they thought that's the problem. That's what we need to do. We need to take care of babies. And then they realized, well, no, we have a lot of single moms that can't make a living and can't take care of their children. And so we need to help them. And that's when MAP came into play. It's Mothers Against Poverty. So you have to qualify. You cannot have any other support. You have to be a single mom and have children. And so and I'll talk a little bit more about MAP, but that's how MAP got started. And so again, they said, okay, we can do this. This is another need. Well, then we had, and then another need presented itself. And as we go through here, and I'll tell you these things, Michael and Doris are the most kind, and they take no credit whatsoever. They say it's God, and it really is. If God didn't want this to happen, he would not keep giving us and bringing me all these different needs that need to be taken care of. And so after MAP got started, then there was a need for Maasai women that were dying in childbirth. 1 in 9 Maasai women out in the villages die in childbirth for one reason or another. It's just crazy. So Save the Mothers was developed, and it's a program where they bring in traditional birthing women, birthers, to come and teach them some more up-to-date techniques on how to help women when they're in labor. Through the Mothers Against Poverty, we came across a lot of our moms had handicapped children. And what happens in Tanzania, unfortunately, is if there's a handicapped child involved, typically the man will leave and say, you must have slept with another man because I didn't make that. And so what we found was we could set these mothers up in businesses, but because of their handicapped child, they were having difficulties running a business due to having to take care of their child. And so then was born our rehabilitation daycare. So now moms that are working and have handicapped children, they bring their children to campus, They spend the day with us, with nannies, with they do all kinds of different things, which I'll talk again in a minute. And we've seen some miraculous miracles, I guess, advancement in these children and what they can do. And it's really turned out to be a great thing. We now have social welfare that is sending children from in the community to us for help. We also have outreach. Sometimes we come across a family or a woman who just needs a little step up. Maybe she needs a few months of food to help get her going. And so we work with a lot of people as an outreach program. We also have 41 children that were originally Name-A-Babies that are now ages 5 through 12 that are being educated. So either they might live with their family, but their family wanted them educated. They might be fostered by one of our nannies, or they might be in boarding school. So we have 41 children that are our own that are now living off campus. We have another program called GIFT, Girls Informed for Tomorrow. Girls that are out, girls that can get an education, you know, education is the key. And if they can get an education and stay in school, their fathers can't marry them off early, and they have a chance to make a better life of themselves, for themselves. But if girls are menstruating, then they can't go to school. And so they can miss a week of school every month. And GIFT is a program that teaches these girls about their bodies and how that all works and where babies come from and everything that's needed. And then we also provide washable pads so that they can use those and go to school. Again, we want to emphasize the more girls that can stay in school, the better they're going to be, because marriage in the bush can start at age 12. Also, very new is a men's program. Everyone says, you don't do anything for the men, you don't do anything for the men. And we're like, well, we take care of babies and moms, but it keeps coming back, it keeps coming up. And so we in March, we had a gentleman that came from Texas, and he did a men's program that was a day-long men's program. We'd never done that before. We tried it. We had 130 men that showed up, and it was a great success. It was a great program. And so now with the volunteers that are coming in the future, we have a man that's going to be there in July. We'll do another men's day. Then we have another gentleman that's coming in September. So it's kind of the beginning of a men's program. When we have male volunteers that come, we always encourage them, and Curtis and Aaron did this when they were there, to have daily Bible studies with our staff, with our men's staff. And that has also been, it's been really, really good. It's been good for the men, and I think it's always good too for the volunteers that come. So we're slowly kind of walking into that and see where God leads us in that area. We were also gifted a water well. Yes, go ahead.
So obviously you're dealing with a different culture and a different mindset.
Absolutely.
And you know, you said Arusha was 2 million people.
Yeah.
And it seems like just like a tip of the iceberg that you're teaching.
Yeah.
But you are having an effect on those people.
We are. We're that tiny pebble that's dropped in the water, and it's starting to take place and take effect. Culture-wise, Tanzania is about 50% Muslim, 50% Christian. In Arusha, it's a little higher Christian. It's probably more 70-30. I would say the Muslims in Arusha are very peaceful. We don't have the issues that you hear on TV every day. But we do come across that. We have some Muslim employees, but we also have men that come to our Bible study that are Muslim, but are very anxious to learn. And so we always know that door is open for them.
Can I ask another?
Absolutely.
You said you had 41 babies or children that could be appropriate?
Right now we have 56 babies on campus, ranging from newborn all the way up to age 7. The older kids we only have a few of, and that's because they have a handicap and that they'll probably be with us forever. But the average age is 2.5.
And what you said was another part of my question. How long do you have these babies?
Well, every situation is different. We try and get the babies out by age 2, whether they return to family or whether they're adopted. And so that's always our goal, is by age 2 that they're back in with a family. Doris was raised at Tipton Christian Home in Oklahoma, and she doesn't believe in orphanages. She doesn't want us to be an orphanage. And so we're a rescue center, is basically what we say. So every situation, like I said, every situation is different. We have kids that won't be able to ever go home, and so we'll keep them. Yes.
Are any of the adoptions?
You have to live in Tanzania for 3 years before you can be considered the ability to adopt. So they really want to keep their children. And so most of the adoptions stay in Tanzania. There are a few. All adoptions are done through social welfare. We don't have any control of that. We do have a full-time social worker that we pay, that's on our payroll. And she works with them, but all those decisions are made by the government. Yeah.
I was wondering, once you get these women started in their own business, you have to deal with any of the men maybe wanting the women back because they're able to support themselves?
Well, sometimes that happens, and the women get very successful, and then the man realizes it and comes back. But then they usually take all their money and leave again. So, but that is, our goal is, if they find a man and they marry him and that's a family made, then that's great. That's not what we see, though, typically. So, I was talking about our water welling. We were gifted a water rig. It came to us, and I think that we probably replaced every part of it, of the well. And but water is life, and especially out in the remote areas, women walk for miles to get water. They may not find water when they get there, and so if we can go out and we can drill water wells, then that really just changes the whole their whole life situation. We right now have 3 wells out in the Maasai area that are doing very well. They're solar powered now, and it is changing the lives of people in those villages. The last thing is football, soccer, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. We had a volunteer that wanted to buy some land for us down below because he thought we needed a soccer field. And we're like, I don't know, that we haven't heard that message from God. But the land was bought, and I have a video later that will tell you a little bit more of the story, but we're now working with 2 organizations, and they're building a soccer field. So every child that comes to us because something tragic has happened in their lives. The mother has died in childbirth, or the child has been abandoned. We work with social welfare. They call us once they find a child, and a child needs to be taken care of. They might be at the hospital. They might be at the police station. But we go and pick them up and just begin to care and love for them. If a Maasai woman has died in childbirth, the family they just can't pay for formula. They can't pay for the care of that baby. So we'll take care of them until they can get to where they're eating regular food, and they can either go back with their family, gives the father a chance to remarry if possible, or maybe a bibi, which is a grandma, or an auntie will be there to help raise them.
Do you guys ever say no? Like if they call you, if they have a kid?
Oh, if a baby is presented?
Yeah.
No, we never say no.
Are there other places that they?
There are, but there's, again, people just don't, the organizations don't, there's not very organizations for babies. We take babies up to 2 years old, but we've been known to say, oh, that baby looks like he's 2. And when it's not, but it's all situational, everything. But normally we say we take up to age 2. But again, they come to us, they might be a few hours old, they might be 8 months old. But we're getting well enough known now, too, that people know about us, know about our programs, and so we're not having to go out and search for people to help. They're bringing babies to us, or women are coming and finding us, or if somebody sees us on the street and they say, we have someone you need to help. NAMA has 6 women department managers that help run the show. They're all Tanzanian. I think Aaron talked about this, but only the Tanzanians are paid at NAMA Village. Anyone that's volunteering, you either self-support, you raise money, different things like that. But no one from outside of Tanzania is paid. But we have 6 wonderful women that take care of each of the programs and run the things. And they're Tanzanians. They know the culture. They know the environment. Mat Mom sometimes, somebody will come and say, I need help. And they said, oh, well, she's a widow. Well, of course we want to help a widow. Well, in that situation, she was a widow, but all of her children were grown and out of the house. So that she was not someone that we would help or was going to help. So it's all situational. Every day is different. Sometimes when I sit in the office, the things that come into the office and the things that are dealt with and the questions that come in, it's totally amazing. Oh, let me show you this. Whoops, let me go back. This is a Bible class that we have Monday through Thursday. We have 4 different rooms in our main baby house. We have isolation, we have babies, we have crawlers and toddlers. And every morning, either the crawlers or toddlers come in and sit down on this rug and they have Bible class. We know that any child that leaves is going to know about Jesus and have Jesus on their heart when they leave us. And this is kind of where it starts. And these kids are amazing. They will come in and sit still for 30 minutes. And if you do something out of order that you've done, they'll tell you. They know the program. They know the way it is. But it's my desk is right here. So I get to see and watch this most days. These are our kiddos. I could tell you stories, and we could be here all day long about the different children, but I just picked a few. This little girl is Lightness. Her mother was an alcoholic, and she came to us when she was 8 months old, and she was 8 pounds. Tiny, tiny little girl. She just was not growing. We couldn't figure out what was going on, and we think that she had a very, very mild case of spina bifida. And but as you can see, she's now growing. She's gone through the daycare. She walks and talks. She's starting to talk more. And again, she's someone that will probably stay with us for a long time. Our newest house that we have for children is called the Hallelujah House. And that is set up for our handicapped babies, our handicapped children that is going to need to stay with us a long period of time. But this is where they're doing their colors. Yes?
Are these little ones, are they taught their native language, or do they understand English?
They do. I mean, all the nannies speak Swahili. And so they learn Swahili, but they're also learning a little English too. When you get into high school, you have to know English to go on. And so English is being taught throughout the country. And I don't know if I got to this or not, but there's 127 tribes of people in Tanzania. They all have their own language, but the country decided that Swahili would be the main language, and so that is the language of Tanzania. But English is very important too, because we're a country of tourism. And so a lot of people do learn English. So, but she's one that we just never thought would walk, would probably have to be either in a walker or a wheelchair, and she just continues to amaze us. She's a very happy girl. And we've taught her blueberries, and that's a very bad, we've started a very bad habit with her. Originally, we had a building built for the MAP program, smaller than this auditorium, and very quickly grew out of that in the MAP program. And so when I came in September of 22, this building was a foundation. And by the following February, we had the grand opening for it. This is a 4,000 square foot building that houses our MAP program and our Save the Mothers program. And so this is a place where women can come and gather and walk through all the different programs that we have for moms. So we offer counseling. They have Bible study. The women that come that need to be rescued or in a dangerous situation, we bring them on campus. We have 10 apartments for them to come and live. The thing that you always need to do when you get someone out of a terrible situation is you got to feed them. You got to take care of their needs. You got to make them feel safe. And so that's something that living in these apartments, they're guarded 24/7. And it's a place for someone just to come and realize that they're loved and are safe. So we have nightly Bible studies. We have weekly Bible studies. The counseling, women that don't know how to read and write Swahili, there's classes for that. Women that want to learn English, there's classes for that. We have computer training. Sewing is a large skill for women and what they can do in businesses that they can have. So they teach sewing, jewelry making, and then another thing is our women's rights series. We have a 16-month series that they meet once a month, and we have 2 young lawyers that come and teach these women what their rights are. They might been kicked off the family property. They don't have their children. They learn that they have rights. They have rights to have their children. They have rights to the property that they were, kicked off of. We teach them self-defense. That's always an interesting time when they do that. But they didn't know that. And so they're learning what their rights are, and so that they can have what their family desires for them to have. This is one story, Glory. She has 3 children. Her husband just kicked her out. She had no place to go. She went with her mother, but then that didn't work out either. And so she came to us. And she spent about 6 months with us, just recouping and getting back to where, she felt like a person again. A lot of our women come and they have been, we've had women that have been cut with machetes. We've had women that are abused. All kinds of strange situations that is just so very important to get them back on track. But she was able to learn some business skills, and we just recently opened, this is called a Duka, which is a small store. And so she is now out in Arusha and working her business. When women come in, we set them up in a business. We just don't say, hey, go make it on your own. We typically pay their rent and food for the first 6 months while they're out and getting started. And then if they're having issues or something and they come back to us, we always take that into consideration. And we want them to succeed in every way. And my time is really getting away from me. So let me keep going here. There's pictures of sewing and jewelry making. Save the Mothers. I talked a little bit about this. These are the older women of the villages. They can't make the decision to come in. We have to go and we have to talk to the men of the villages and say, we would like to do this for you. Can we do that? And then they make the decision and they tell us who's coming. What time does church start?
In about 60.
In about 6 minutes, okay. So here's Save the Mothers. I have flyers that will tell you a little bit more, but we have women and they stand up at graduation and they tell us what they've learned. These women don't read, they don't write, but they sit in a weeks-long class and learn new techniques that will help them and help the mothers that are giving birth. We do a morning devotional. This is just pictures of the conferences. This is our rehab center. Nannies work. We do massage therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, music therapy. Music is just Tanzania. Everyone sings. Everyone loves to sing, and it's very important in their culture. There's outreach. The 3 children in the 2 middle pictures are the first set of triplets that we got. And while they have a mom, that mom needed help when the babies were brand new. And so she stayed with us for a while at NAMA. But these 3 kids are now in the outreach program and they're in school and all doing very well. This is the farm. We also have a farm. We have a pig, we have 10 cows, 2 of them are pregnant right now, and we have about 300 chickens. Every 6 weeks, we slaughter 100 chickens that we use on campus. We feed our employees once a day, and they'll have breakfast if they're there during breakfast. And then, of course, all the volunteers, the babies, the milk goes for all the babies. We have a pasteurizing system. And so it's quite an event. I have done things with cows that you would just never imagine. We also have a farm, and we raise just about everything. And we have lots of fruit trees, and we have bananas, we have coffee. This is coffee, it's kind of hard to see. But we, depending on the season, we can raise 70 to 90% of the food that we consume. At NAMA Village. And so it's amazing. When I was there in 2019, Doris showed me this small plot that was about this section, size of this section. And she said, someday we hope to be where we're self-sustaining. And we're really, really close. We can't grow pineapple, we're too high. So that pineapple is one thing that we do buy, but you would be amazed at some of the things that grow in this in the land. It's very volcanic ash. Our staff, we have 95 full-time staff members. Majority, about half of that are nannies. We have 3 shifts of nannies. They work 3 days on, 3 days, 3 nights, and then they have 3 days off. And this was a celebration. This is goat. We were having Easter. This was what we had for our employees at Easter time. So all kinds of different people. I know one thing Aaron said was he just talked about the maintenance guys. But as you can see here, nannies, nurses, cleaners, cooks, garden workers, maintenance workers, well drillers, animal workers. We have a minister, we have a counselor, we have a music teacher, we have a preschool teacher, and we have our guards. Garter World, I don't know if you're familiar with Garter World, but they're here in the United States, and they guard the property with our electric fence. And so once you're in NAMA, it's a very safe, great environment. It's not unsafe when you leave either, but it is very safe. So these are some of our employees. These 2 girls here are the volunteer house cook and cleaner. They take care of us. We eat a lot of American type food, but we also eat Tanzanian food. I don't know if Aaron told you, but he had termites. We have termites for volunteers. Take some popcorn. Also, the great thing about coming to Africa is seeing God's creation. And we have several national parks where you can go and see the animals and go on a 1-day safari, 2-day safari. And right outside the truck, you can see these animals up close. I wanted to show a video, and we can put that online so you can see it. I'll tell you just a couple things about the soccer field. I told you we had a volunteer that came and said, I'm going to buy land because I want you to do a soccer field. And we said, they said, God hasn't told us that we need to build a soccer field. And we had a volunteer that came in, and she was just kind of like a day volunteer. She works with another organization, and she had come and visited. She loved to come and see the babies when she was in Arusha. And she came in and sat down with Doris and Michael one day, and she said, what does it mean to you if I say soccer? And Doris was like, soccer? What have you been hearing? Who told you about soccer? And she said, I work for an organization that wants to come and build you a soccer field. Lights, there's going to be bleachers, there's going to be a bathroom. I mean, it's just, a full-blown soccer field. When you see soccer fields in Arusha, they're all mud and dirt, and you just don't see it. We do have a big stadium for the national players, but we don't have soccer fields where kids can go and have fun and play. And so she said, wow, and okay, well, let's continue to talk about this. Then another organization came into play, the Michael G. Bloom Foundation. This gentleman was from the East Coast. He was very soccer, he wanted to work with kids, and unfortunately, God called him home at age 30. And his wife wanted to continue his love of soccer and to build soccer fields. And so everything came together just at the right time. And she came and visited us and saw what we were doing and what we wanted to do. And she said, well, I want to build your soccer field. And so it's down at the bottom of our property. And when it's done, we'll have men's leagues, women's leagues, children's leagues. We talked to little girls and we said, you will be able to come out here and learn how to play soccer. Well, there's never a safe place for girls to play soccer in Tanzania. And so it's a new ministry we never would have dreamed of, but it's a ministry that's going to be open to the community, and it'll be their soccer. So I will leave the link to it. It's on YouTube. Just kind of describes a little bit and shows you Neema. Doris and Michael are on the video also. But so like I said, I could talk all day long, and I could tell you stories, and I'd love to tell you more stories. But I have left some flyers here that tell you a little bit more about the programs. I'm happy to talk to anybody more. I will be back at the end of the month, beginning of May, before I leave and to go back to Arusha. But it's a wonderful program. It's a wonderful ministry. It's one that I was able to just walk right into and get involved with. I didn't have to start it. I didn't have to raise the money. And it's not something that I ever dreamed that that's something I would do, especially not sitting here in the auditorium growing up. But thank you for letting me take the time of your class this morning and share a little bit about you.